Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music, any old way you choose it.
Hello, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, and I'll be spinning some rockin' 50s records every week here on my channel, as well as sharing some cool Coca-Cola collectibles and other neat vintage finds. Stay tuned. Hey guys, this is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great video for you today. In this video, we are continuing our read of this 1953 saucy romance novel called Katie and Her Camera by Lois Holbert. I'm sorry we've had a little hiatus. As Doo-Wop Bob put it, Katie's camera has been broken, but it is now fixed, and we are so glad to be back reading Katie and Her Camera. This is a fantastic book, and I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. Chapter 11 is here, and there are so many good developments that I can't wait to find out about. Katie has just done so beautifully with her job and getting her pictures in Life magazine, and I can't wait to find out if she and Paul Serral are going to end up together, because I really think that they're a good fit. He is such a good guy, and then Mr. Esperon has coached her so well through the entire process of photography, and she's really learning a lot. But maybe her mom will fall in love with Mr. Esperon, so we'll have to see. And there's still something up with Diana Caldwell. I just can't figure out what it is, but we're going to have to read on in chapter 11 and see what happens. Okay, so before we jump into this fun 1953 book, let's talk a little bit about the calendar. Now, the calendar is returning as far as I know. Angela Marksberry is working really hard every week to put out a live sale calendar, and you can follow her on Instagram at Angela Marksberry. I will link her down below. Also, Misty has a fantastic page on Discord. You can download the app, sign up for free, and join all of us talking antiques and vintage, and you can get a live look at what's happening every week on YouTube. So lots of great opportunities to find out what's happening. Also, please follow me on Instagram, because I do my best every day to put out a little list of what's happening on YouTube on my Instagram stories. I enjoy doing it, and it's a great way to promote other channels and sellers here in the vintage community. Okay, so let's find out what happens in chapter 11. We're going to jump in right now. Chapter 11, Kenny's Initiation. The spring quarter was almost over when the generous check came from Life. It was a shot in the arm to Katie and a boost to her small bank account. She went out on a shopping spree with Ralph as a guide, looking for her own Rolleiflex. They examined several, both new and used, and found a used camera in such good condition that Ralph advised her to take it instead of using most of her check for a new one. They picked out some accessories: a Polaroid filter to cut down light reflections, another filter to minimize haze in landscapes, a yellow filter to intensify sky values, and a set of proctors that she could fix on the viewing and taking lenses so that she could take close-ups. Now, don't forget to take them off and put them back in their cases when you're through with them, Esperon warned, or you'll be wondering why your next sequence is off in timing and clarity. He examined her new possession and handed it to her with a smile. Good luck and many more fine features, Katie. Your next camera should be a Leica, Context, or a Nikon, I think. But Katie was too encaptured with her new Rolleiflex to dream of owning still another camera. Now I really have my own outfit, she said happily. With the tripod Paul gave me and the darkroom equipment you gave me, I'm all set. They stopped to have coffee and donuts, and Ralph asked her about her job hunting. Katie turned as gloomy as her excitement permitted. Oh, it's getting very discouraging. I've had lots of interviews, and the editors always seem to react well and like my work, but when they discover I haven't a major in journalism or any experience on the Minnesota Daily, they begin to stall and say they think about it and look around a bit more and then let me know. All journalism majors have been hired because they've already had some experience, either with the Daily or other student publications, or as correspondents for some hometown newspaper. But I needed a job with you, and I really couldn't afford the extra time. Don't lose heart, Katie. In the long run, you'll find that your photographic experience will make up for all the other. I've reached the point where I dread facing another interview. So far, there's only been one really promising lead, and I'm afraid that will fall through too. She told him about the interview with Robert Bailey, an editor of a small-town newspaper in southern Minnesota. Paul told me about him and arranged an appointment for me yesterday while he was in town. He seemed awfully sweet, more like a Victorian family physician than a newspaper editor. Sort of warm and courtly and leisurely. He had seen my pictures of the ghosts and said that he wanted to use local photographs more, so he's very much interested in my experience with you. He said he'd let me know soon, and the salary seemed reasonable. Rather good, in fact. How's your mother taking the idea of you leaving home to work in a small town? Surprisingly well. I know she'll miss me if I have to be away. Well, we've always been so close. And I'll miss her, and Kenny too. It's strange to see Kenny growing up so, taking more responsibility around the house. I think it will be a good experience for all of you. Your mother might be forced to see more of her friends instead of concentrating on her family. And being alone in a new place will be good for you too. You'll learn a lot about yourself, about your needs as well as your abilities. You don't really know yourself very well until you've been alone a bit. He changed the subject. Is Kenny using your box camera these days? Yes, poor kid. He gets the hand-me-downs. He keeps teasing me to teach him about using the darkroom. And I've meant to, but I've been just too busy. Maybe tonight I'll take him down and initiate him. Katie did, and Kenny was thrilled. She started with the developing process, turning out all the lights and loading the developing tank in a complete darkness, letting Kenny feel her hands as she fed the film in and letting him try it for himself with the second roll. He lost his temper over the first 2 or 3 hitches, and she calmed him down. You can't afford to have a bad temper in the darkroom. You only mess things up. Just roll it in gently now. It's your own film, so you better not run it. It's all in? All right, now we can turn on all the lights we want. The tank is light-proof with the cover on. They poured in the developer. The temperature is 68 degrees, so we'll have time in exactly 28 minutes. Katie set the timer. Keep stirring it from time to time. Now, while we're waiting for that, let's mix up some new developer for films and some fresh developer for paper because, well, we're all out. Do you always give it the same time, Kenny asked. No, it varies with film and the temperature and whether the film is under or overexposed or just right. And if you use different developer, it varies with that too. But I've gotten used to the D76 and use that almost all the time, so I know that pretty well. You said you thought that the exposures were normal, so I gave it time as directed in the instructions. If the film is underexposed, you let it develop a little longer to increase the contrast, you see? Kenny showed how to stir up the developer powder after measuring and mixing hot and cold water to get the just right temperature. Now, just follow the directions and you won't have any trouble. Did you remember to turn the film again? It's almost time now to empty the developer. That's right. Now, let the cold water run through the top and rinse off the developer. Let's rinse it for a while and then empty it again, and then we pour in the hypo. I've been using Rapid Fix-All because it's fast and easy to mix. We let it stand now for 3 or 4 minutes to clear and fix the negatives, and after all that we can lift off the top and take a look at the film. The intervening minutes were excruciating agony for Kenny, so she distracted him with questions about what he'd taken, and then it was time for Kenny to open the tank and empty the hypo. She smiled, watching him, remembering her own thrill at first developing her negatives. His hands fairly shook, but he handled the films with exquisite care, rinsing them again in the cold water and taking them off the reel to examine them in the light. You really should let them wash for half an hour in cold water on the reel before examining them, but I guess for the first time you can take a look and then wash them in the loose tank. Kenny looked crushed when he saw the negatives. How can you tell anything about them by these dark strips? He wailed. I can't see a thing. Yes, you can when you get used to them. Look, I can see your Scoutmaster, and is that Fred and Johnny with him? And this must be Mother, and this is... Why, Kenny, that's me, isn't it? I didn't know you took it. It looks quite good, too. Kenny began to study the negatives again, after they had been washed, and learned to see a little more in them. Why can't we enlarge them now? Well, they have to dry first, then you make contact prints of them, and then you choose the best ones and enlarge them. It was too late to work that night when the strips had dried, but Kenny swore he'd get up the next morning at 7 if Katie would come down and let him print 1 or 2 negatives before school. His eagerness won her over. Next morning, when she finished her breakfast and came down to the basement, Kenny had already bruised himself with drawing the black opaque curtains across the windows and had set up the trays. Everything's ready, Katie. He hovered at her elbow, watching her measure out the developer for the enlarging paper. She filled the second tray with water and the third with hypo and turned on the safe light, then took the cover from the enlarger. At her instructions, Kenny cut the strip of 12 negatives into 3 sections of 4 each. These, then, she put in an 8x10 frame covered with glass, then in the darkness put in the contact paper. This is why we call them contacts, she explained, holding them up to the light for a 6-second exposure. They are made by actual contact between the negative and the paper. See, they'll be the same size as the negative. In other words, they're not done by projection as enlargements are. By the safe light, he switched the paper around in the developer until the shapes began to form. His excitement rose. Look, look, Katie, look, it's Mom. See, isn't it good? Say it looks swell, doesn't it? Katie laughed, sharing his excitement and responding again, as if it were her first experience with printing. After rinsing, Kenny transferred the contact prints with tongs to the hypo tray, and in a few minutes they turned on the white light. Kenny was hypnotized by his achievement and couldn't take his eyes from the paper. They really are pretty good for a beginner, Katie said judiciously. The Mother is awfully good, and the one of me is quite nice. But see here, you must have stuck a finger in front of the lens. And here, you let your shadow get into the picture. And what's this thing in the back of your Scoutmaster? It looks like it's growing out of his head. Well, we can't look at all of these today. If you want a print or 2 done before school, we'll have to get busy. While the contacts were being washed in the sink, Katie showed Kenny how to work the enlarger for focusing and adjusting the size and light. They tried 3 of the 4 negatives and put them all in the wash before it was time for Kenny to head off to school. Wait till I tell the fellas what I've been doing, Kenny said with sparkling eyes. None of them know how to do this, and only a couple of them even have a camera. They both take their pictures to the drugstore for developing and printing, he added with a proper scorn. Hey, Katie, can I bring Fred and Johnny home tonight to look at all the prints? All right, but only if you promised faithfully not to touch anything but the prints. When they're all washed, that should be in half an hour, I'll run down and hang them up to dry. You'll find them here when you come home, but no demonstrating on the enlarger, mind you. She studied the prints as they floated in the tray, swirling gently in the falling water. The one of her mother was quite a beauty, except that it was a little blurred and a little soft in the outlines, and the others weren't bad at all. He made a few mistakes, but that's natural. The main thing was that Kenny showed signs of being able to catch the spontaneity that graced Katie's best photography, along with a fair grasp of composition. Well, one day he might be a real competitor. Katie, Mrs. Owen's voice sounded excited. Come up, dear. There's a wire for you. Could it be from that Mr. Bailey? Well, guys, that is it for Chapter 11. How fun was that, Kenny learning to use the enlarger and all of those fun things in the basement? I'm so glad that Katie got to teach her brother. They're going to really bond over that, I think. And there's still more to come because I want to find out with Mr. Bailey what's going to happen, and we'll learn more about that in Chapter 12 next Monday. It sounds like a really good phone call. So thank you guys for tuning in this week to Katie and her camera. I will be back regular now with Katie and her camera on Mondays. I've been a little bit busy and I had a live sale, so things have gotten a little bit delayed. But don't worry, Katie and her camera will be back every Monday at 10 a.m. for you all. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts down below. So for now, stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube.
That's why I go for that rock and roll